Okay, so we've got this image where we have a lot of damage going on, especially close to the eyes. And this is going to be really challenging to retouch without knowing a little bit more of intermediate to advanced level concepts. So obviously we could go in with care and retouch, the minor imperfections. But the bigger challenges like this damage as well as this damage and even the eyebrow. So we do want to make sure that we understand how to go about correcting this. Now you could try to do this with a clone stamp, but I think it might be a little bit challenging to get it as perfect as you could with that tool versus actually starting to learn some other techniques. So we could technically copy pixels and put them on a new layer and move them around and put them where we want them. Now what's nice about this is a lot of times images are symmetrical, and if they are, we can borrow things. So for instance, if we wanted to correct this part of the ear, we could actually borrow from the other side if they are somewhat similar. So we'll actually go through this with part of the eye and see how this works out. This is the first time demoing it in this instance, and so in some cases we may want to actually go through and do this in multiple steps. So we'll work through this. So I'm actually going to take this eye and we're going to move it over here and try to use it with this area right here. Now for me to be able to get this to work, I need to make a nice big selection that will cover most of that area. Okay. Now I'm not too worried about this eyebrow. This would be easy to actually retouch, but this one over here we may actually want to take some of that eyebrow or even these pixels here. So we'll see how that works out. So with that said, I'm going to create a selection, which I just used the simple lasso tool there, and I literally just dragged around the eye where I want it to be able to select. And then from there I'm going to go up to layer, new, and then I'm going to say layer new, layer via copy. So I do not want to cut this out of my photo, I want to copy it. And when it does that, it's going to create a brand new layer. And that brand new layer now, I can get my move tool to take this eye and move it over here. Now that obviously does not look right because that's the wrong side of his eye over there. So we do need to learn how to basically flip this. And so we're going to basically go to Edit, Transform, and then we're going to say Flip Horizontal. And then it does the opposite. Okay. And in this case, we just basically want to try to line things up. And this is where it may not be exact. Even though we think people are symmetrical, their eyes may not be exactly the same. And this is where it does help to zoom in just a little, even if we can just see the creases in the eyes to line them up. We can actually put that over top. And that's pretty close. If it's off, we can actually move it around later. So the problem obviously is we see this harsh edge around the outside here. We do now have a corrected area here, but the problem is now we have damage over here. So this is where we're going to learn a technique called masking, and we will learn it a lot over the course of this semester as you're taking this course. But masking is basically going to allow us to reveal or hide parts of the layer. So right down here on the bottom of the layers panel, I'm going to click on that layer mask, and it's being applied to this eye. And so with that said, I basically need to take now a paintbrush and we're going to paint onto this mask. So it's almost like an extra feature our layer now has that allows us to do more creative stuff. So the way masks work is when you paint with black, it shows the layer beneath, and when you paint with white, it brings it back. So it's almost like, not that. So if you notice that I just painted black just like this, you do want to pay attention to which part of the layer you have selected. So for some reason it defaulted to my layer, probably because I renamed it. And then we do have the layer mask here. So we want to make sure the layer mask is selected, double check and make sure black is activated, and then we're going to be able to come in with close care and try to retouch this so it's a little bit more close to what I'm going for. Now really the areas that we want to be able to work for us are right along here, along the edge, and then along here. So if you can just get some of that crease of the eye to be the same, then we want to keep the original stuff that does work. And that's where after you're done, you do want to make sure that you go in with a little bit more care to actually retouch the rest of the eye, like this part right here. Let me just take a look. Some of that's just the actual original eye there, so we would actually probably retouch some of that back. Let's see what happens when I want to bring it back. And this is where you get to decide between the two eyes. And some of this you may actually retouch afterwards with a clone stamp. So the bigger goal is that this big, huge area, that would be a lot for you to be able to carry over and try to retouch from scratch. So you're able to move those pixels. And now, the thing that's going to be a little bit more challenging for you is obviously we do, and let me just go ahead and copy this layer, we do want to make sure that we're able to work just a little bit further down. So you may actually, you know, keep copies of things so you have a working part. Let's just keep a copy of that, and we're going to hide it. And it says copy, so we'll leave it saying copy. But in this case, and this one right now is now hidden. So if I wanted to retouch this eye further because there's still some damages going on, I can actually do what's called merging my layer down. And so it may actually, let's see, it looks like I might have to commit to my mask. So let's see, so it does make me commit to my mask. So we're going to go ahead and apply that layer mask to that. And then we can basically, we should be able to merge this file. Let's see. The color mode's correct. Oh, there it is. I'm right clicking on the layer and there's my merge option. So they do have a lot of context menus. I'm used to right clicking on almost everything and seeing options. I'm surprised it's not available there. So this context menu right here is where we're going to go to merge down. And whether or not we had that layer mask, it should have worked originally. So we're going to merge down, and those two layers now have become one. So now when we retouch this and we start going in with like a patch tool, we're going to be able to continue to correct. And because these pixels don't have all of these big changes in them, we're able to go in with a lot more care, and that's where you would go in and actually blend it even further. Okay, so it's not going to necessarily fix everything perfectly when you do copy layers and parts of your layers, but it does give you just the pixels that you need to be able to get things working. And so from there, you're just going to use your other retouching tools to help you blend. So you do want to try to keep a copy of whatever you do have. You will notice that, like for instance, I see a little bit here where I probably could have transitioned it better. That is where you do have the ability to go back in if you need to fix that. With that said, I would just continue now with this area here and go in with a little bit more care so that it does look a little bit more like the eye that we're going for. And it's up to you if you want to have this many little highlights in the eyes. I do notice that there's 3 now, but it's not necessarily a negative thing, but you can actually go in with your retouching tools, and if you want to remove one of them, you can. And then just continue to perfect things. So you can take this approach with both sides of the eyes. Obviously it's going to take several layers to get that to work on both sides. In the opposite case, you would actually mask the opposite side. In the case of the eyebrow, we may actually take you know, this actual part of the eyebrow and carry it over if you're not able to clone this much over. So just keep in mind that that is an option for you to be able to take parts of a photo from one side and carry it over. It's also very common when you're taking group photographs, etc. If somebody does not smile, you know, you might take multiple photographs. And that's where you can actually go in and, you know, decide that one of the people gets to smile even though they really weren't. So it does take a lot of time to continue to blend it after you do create this. So that's where you may possibly need to merge those layers together. It's just wise to keep a copy of it so you have a working version if you ever need to go back to it. And then just continue to retouch until it blends perfectly. And then, yeah, so this should give you a lot of options so that you're not starting from scratch. This would be a lot more tedious to recreate this part of the eye just from scratch with retouching. So use the existing pixels you have in your photo, and hopefully that helps you so that whenever you do have pixels to work with, you can use them for the maximum potential so that you aren't just necessarily painting an image from scratch, because some of these errors or mistakes and damages, they are a little bit harder to retouch. So like in this area, we would actually want to take like a clone stamp in because we have actual pixels missing and they're not just going to blend using a patch tool.